Welcome to the Mindset Playground. Whether you're thinking about starting your own business or just looking to become inspired, award-winning entrepreneur LouAnne Hunt is here putting into practice what she teaches every day. She's a certified Canfield trainer in the Success Principles and Diabetes Prevention Program lifestyle coach. So please welcome the host of the Mindset Playground, LouAnne Hunt.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Mindset Playground, where you're going to get your daily dose of positivity. And I'm your host, LouAnne Hunt. And I want you to know that you are always one decision away from a completely different life. Now, I promise, if you watch the Mindset Playground, it will never be dull or boring. You will laugh, you may cry, but no matter what, you will leave with a dose of positivity. So I have an amazing show for you today. Oh my goodness. I am so honored that this person has taken time out of his busy schedule to come and play with me on the Mindset Playground. And I cannot wait for you to meet this person. So without further ado, Brian, welcome to the Mindset Playground. How are you today?
I am really good, LouAnne. Thank you very much. It's great to be here with you.
Well, I got to tell you, it is great to have you. So I'm just so excited. Now, you have written an amazing book, and I got to tell you, I'm on my third time, my third time listening to it. I'm a huge fan of audiobooks, and I'm so glad that you recorded the audiobook, which is actually something that I'm going to do one day, an audiobook, because I really believe in the voice and the listening to something, how it just resonates with it kind of gives you that vibration. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's kind of interesting. When I first wrote the book, I never thought about doing it on audio, and somebody suggested that I should, and it should be in my voice. And I wanted my wife involved, so it's my wife that you hear for the consider points in the book. And it was kind of a fun thing doing that. It really, I got in the emotion of it. It was a lot of fun producing that. But what's really interesting is that the book seems to be selling as much on audio as it is in print form. So I had no idea that there is such a high demand for audiobooks. So that's been a learning lesson and kind of a fun experience. It's been great hearing from people that have listened to the book instead of read it and have resonated, I guess, with the sound of my voice and the sound of my wife's voice. And it's been a fun journey.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to say to you, and I'm sure you've probably heard this 1,000 times, but wow, do you ever sound like your dad? So I think that that's probably why it was almost like I was listening to your father, and but your message is wonderful, and I loved the fact that you are giving us the story from your point of view, right? Because it's always great to hear these wonderful leaders. So let's talk about your dad just briefly, and just kind of how amazing he was, and you're following obviously in his footsteps.
Well, you know what, LouAnne, it's kind of interesting. Bob Proctor obviously is a well-known name, certainly in the personal development space. I count myself really lucky. I feel like I live a charmed life because I had Bob Proctor as a father. He was a great father. And even a better kind of business partner. I got to work with him for close to 30 years. And it was a joy working with him. And when I first started thinking about writing a book, I remember saying to Corey, my wife, I said, Dad always says everybody's got a book in them. And I felt, I needed to write something about my experiences. And I said to her, I wasn't quite sure, what I should write about. And Corey kind of looked at me in a funny way. And she says, Brian, she says, what is that one question you get asked at all the seminars, all the events you're at? It's always, what's it like being Bob Proctor's son? What's it like having Bob Proctor as a father? So I thought, wow, I could write something that would give a different perspective of who Bob Proctor is. And fortunately, I started writing this book when my father was alive. And LouAnne, I will tell you, we had a lot of fun around it. Both Dad and I are morning or early morning people, so it would be, quite frequently we'd be on the phone at 5 a.m. and I'd be telling him what I was writing about, and we'd share some stories, and he'd give me his perspective on the story, and I'd give him mine, and it was a bit of a joy, and we had a lot of fun together with it. I did not have the title of the book yet, and I had a couple of ideas, but none of them felt right. And it's interesting. Dad just said, he said, Brian, just relax on that. It'll come when it's supposed to come. Don't rush it. And unfortunately, he passed away before the book was finished and before I even had the title of the book. But I certainly feel his presence. And as you said in the audio book, I feel my father working through me so often. And it's interesting. Sometimes I'll come out and say something, and I think to myself, "Oh my God, I sounded like Dad there." It's been an interesting journey. Yeah.
Well, it's a wonderful, wonderful story. And I love it because not only do you talk about your dad and answer all those burning questions, but we find out about you and what it was like growing up as you, not just as Bob Proctor's son.
Right.
So we're very privileged for that. And the one question that I did have about this was, did you and your father always plan that when he does pass on that you would kind of take over? Was that always the plan?
No, not at all. And I don't really consider myself as taking over. You know, it, I was never one to, I guess, look to be on stage or to be on podcasts or doing anything of this nature. I was always behind the scenes in the marketing, getting my father out there. And it's interesting when I wrote the book and the book came out. I'll be honest with you, LouAnne, it changed the course of my life. I started getting all kinds of requests to come on stage, to be in interviews, and that's not what I was expecting. Didn't think that was going to be my path, but it seems to be going that route. And I don't look at it as taking over for Dad. I look at it as carrying on his message. I'll never speak like Bob Proctor. He was a pretty unique individual and a unique speaker. Um, and I don't know as I even want to speak like him. Um, Dad was always, we're all unique and we all have our own thing. And so for me, it's sharing my story from my perspective, of who Bob Proctor was, how he affected my life, and really how those lessons can affect your life and help all of us live a better existence. So for me, I guess it's my way of carrying on his memory and sharing, with the world who Bob Proctor was, what he was about, and really what his message was about. So that's kind of where I've been going with it.
Well, it's wonderful. So I don't want you to for 1 minute think that, everybody's going to be expecting, and I really do hope that people don't expect it to be, Bob Proctor
Right.
speaking from the other side. But it really is a wonderful book about you and how exciting your life was. So if I could share with you my favorite chapter, we could talk about it.
Sure. Yeah, happy to.
Well, my favorite, I loved it all, don't get me wrong, but my favorite chapter, and this is completely a story about you, it has nothing to do with your dad,
Mhm.
is chapter 8, which is it's possible the answer is right in front of you. And I really resonated with it. I don't know, because there's so many times that things are right in front of you and you don't even see it. It's kind of like not seeing the forest for the trees. So, can we talk about chapter 8 and pup?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So chapter 8 was a fun story to write. And I did not know that that story was going to get as much attention as it did. It's interesting how many people resonated with that story. Um, and it's really more about nature. I'm a bit of a nature nut. I just love nature. I love getting out in nature. Whenever I need to get grounded, I'll go out in a kayak or the boat or go for a hike in the woods. I just love to get out into nature. And that chapter was around Pup, this seal that I had named. This was back, gosh, it was 1999. I had moved out west. um, I I I just have a thing for the West Coast, and I was born and raised in Toronto. So when I first got out to British Columbia, it was like, wow, this is a magical place. And I found a house to rent until I could figure out, where life was going to take me, and it was right on the ocean. And the fella I rented it from, he gave me a canoe and these big traps to catch prawns, which are large shrimp. And so I started, doing that. I started going out in the canoe and setting out these prawn traps, and I was having a lot of fun trying to figure out how to do this. And every time I'd go out, there was always a few seals that were around, and it was kind of fun. It's just seeing these little critters out in the wild. And there was one in particular, and this is the one I called Pup, and he was always coming really close to me and had unique spotting on his face that I could always tell who he was, or she. I just say he. Um, and it was just really a cute little animal. It just looked like a puppy to me. That's why I called it Pup, and I just started calling it Pup. And I would have little conversations with this seal. I would talk gently to it, and it seemed to enjoy that, and it was always coming close to me. Well, do you want me to tell the whole story?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay.
I love this story.
So, the story in this chapter is about this experience. And it was in the wintertime, and wintertime storms come up on the West Coast pretty frequently. And I had the traps out and it had been storming, so I was not able to get them for a couple of days. And I didn't like leaving them out there for too long. So as soon as there was a bit of a lull in the storm, I went out in this kayak and or kayak, a canoe, and I got the traps up, but the storm was rolling in a little bit. It was a little bit rough. It was a little foggy, and I couldn't quite tell. I always was able to tell my location between moored boats and shoreline and stuff, so that I knew where I was dropping them. And I guess I got things emptied. It was getting rough. I had to get them back over it, and I guess I blew away a little bit from where I normally would be, and I was in deeper water. I put the traps over, and I had 300 feet of rope, and then this big buoy. Well, normally the trap would go down, and I still had leftover rope, and I would throw the buoy over. Well, it just kept going this time, but it was a little rough, and I couldn't grab it to stop because if I did, I'd probably flip over, and that wouldn't have been a good situation. So the whole thing, it went to the end of the rope, took the buoy, and went underwater. And I thought that was it. I lost them. So I just paddled back into shore. That's what I had to do because it was blowing up again. And it probably took a couple of days before things cleared up. And when it did, it was a beautiful sunny day. And I rigged up a long pole with a hook. I figure I'm going to paddle out there and hopefully I'll see that buoy underneath the water somewhere that I'll be able to reach it. And I was out there for a good hour, hour and a half. I couldn't find it for the life of me. Well, Pup was out there with me as I'm paddling around, and he was the only seal around that particular time. And he was always coming close and looking at me, and I'm talking to him. And it's an hour and a half, close to 2 hours. I finally gave up and I paddled back into shore. And as I'm pulling the kayak up on the shore, I hear this barking. And I look out and it was Pup, and he was barking and he was swimming in circles, but he was way out there. And I thought, boy, that's really odd. And I started pulling the canoe up a little bit more again, and he was barking louder, and he was like swimming in really fast circles. And I thought to myself, God, is that possible? Could he be telling me something? And that's when intuition, whatever, is like, I have to listen to this. So I put the canoe back in the water and I paddled out to him. And he was way further out than I would ever put the traps. And I get out there, and where was he swimming around? The buoy was 6 feet under the water, was right there. It was an incredible experience. I'm thinking how this seal knew exactly what I was looking for, but then even more important, was able to guide me back out to it was just, I mean, I don't know, you can't make that kind of stuff up. It was just really weird. And so I got the traps, pull them up, and I'll just never forget that moment of kind of bonding with this animal. And the interesting thing was I had a neighbor a couple of doors down who I think he looked at me, not in the greatest of way because I was coming from the East, and people from the West, sometimes they don't like the people from the East. And he was always critical of me. He says, "You're never going to catch prawns. There's no prawns left." Oh, I started catching prawns. But the interesting thing was he came over to me after that and was like all smiles and said to me, he says, "Brian, I have to admit, I have never witnessed anything like that." He was standing on his deck and witnessed the whole experience. And gosh, it's a memory that will last my lifetime. And today I live on the water again, down in Puget Sound in the Northwest in Washington. And there's seals here all the time. And to close out this kind of story, I actually had a really cool experience just probably 5 months ago. We built this house here, and we have built this balcony that's covered up off our master bedroom that we sit out, Corey and I, every morning with her coffee, and we just we call it the morning traffic report. We're both early morning people. We face east, so we watch the sunrise, and we just like to see what's coming by. Well, one morning at 5 a.m., I got to witness literally 15, 20 feet in front of me in the shallow water, a seal giving birth to a pup. And happened right in front of me. And I got to witness the whole thing. And it was an incredible experience. And I don't think a lot of people get to witness that kind of stuff. So I certainly feel, in harmony with a lot of nature and nature's ways. And it's been a great experience. And it was fun to write about in the book.
Yeah, well, I absolutely loved it. There were a couple of chapters that I had kind of had a sneak peek when I had gone to some meetings, and you were there. And it was kind of cool to, I couldn't wait to get the book. I downloaded it right away.
Mhm.
I was so excited when I saw that it was in audio. So I downloaded it right away, and I was like listening and listening and waiting for these stories. But it was just exciting. So that's the question that I have actually is how did you, because I can only imagine, the book would be a million pages if you were to write about your whole life. But
Mhm.
how did you choose which stories you really wanted to talk about?
You know what? I just follow my intuition. And I didn't write the book from front to back. I wrote it in segments, in stories. And my wife was really my editor, and she helped where to place things and make things flow in a better way. Um, and I just wrote I think to the major points of the important lessons that I've learned from Dad, that I think will benefit other people. Um, is there a place where you can ever stop? Probably not, but I certainly think I covered off all the major pieces. And the book it's fairly substantial. It's 300 and some pages. It's not a short book. Um, but I really feel I got the essence of who Dad was, who I am, how the lessons and stories that I have with him have helped me live a better life, and certainly I think how they can help others.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And like I said, I just loved every single chapter, and it was great. And it was wonderfully said, I guess, or read. And I loved the parts from your wife because it was kind of like she took the whole chapter and she just kind of put it together and said, okay, so this is what you should do, that type of thing. And I really liked it. So it's just so interesting. Now
Well,
I know that I noticed that you didn't talk a lot about vision boards,
mhm,
and I know that it is a huge part of Bob's life and yours.
mhm.
So can we talk about it for a second?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. What would you like to know?
Well, like I do vision boards,
Mhm,
and I'm a huge fan of John Azaraf because I'm the one who, like, that's who I learned what a vision board was because of the movie The Secret. I didn't really know, and it's just so many things that have helped me, and not just the fact that it's things that I've wanted, but it's also how it makes me feel. And if I can give you an example of that, Brian, I had to go in for some major surgery, and I was really not dealing with it well. And I was kind of going down that whole, poor me hole.
Mhm.
And I thought, it's not gonna hurt me to do a vision board. And so I created this vision board, which is still hanging above my desk, yes, my desk on the wall. And it's all about feeling good. And I actually took that vision board and I brought it with me to the hospital
Wow.
and I hung it. I asked the nurse actually to hang it on the wall across from my bed. And it turned out that's where the closet was. But anyway, so the nurse did. And it was amazing how many people came in and said, "What is this? Wow, that's amazing." And I got to tell you, it just really got me through a really difficult part. So I think that, in my opinion, not only do I do vision boards for what I want, because right above it, I have that vision board that's got all my things that I want to accomplish, but I think that it's really important to have a vision board that's going to just make you feel
Right.
better, positive. So, what's your take on that?
I think vision boards are very important. And some people fluff them off as they're not that big of a deal. I disagree. I think they're very important. And I love your story. I've never heard of a vision board being taken into a hospital like that. It's a great idea. So for me, I used to have a vision board in our bedroom. I would create it out, and I always framed it. I liked a proper frame on it. I wanted it to look like, like a piece of art almost. And I had it in the bedroom so I'd see it first thing when I woke up and last thing when I go to bed. And since the book came out, I've been in my office a lot. So I actually moved it from my bedroom, and mine's right across from me. And, Dad had always taught the importance of these things. And I have to agree. I think they're incredibly important. And here's why. I think when you keep looking at it, even if you have things on your vision board that might be crazy, it might be like some crazy achievement. How would I ever get there? You keep looking at it every day. That crazy is not going to seem so crazy after a while. And before long, you'll start to believe, you know what? I can do that. That's the power of these vision boards. They get you comfortable with big ideas. And for me, I'm looking at it as I'm speaking. It keeps me focused on what's important to me, my goals. It's not like I have one goal there. I've got several goals, but I certainly have my one major goal. But then I have all kinds of offshoot things that I'd like to do and accomplish. And so for me, that's the importance of it. It gets you comfortable with big ideas. And when we get comfortable with big ideas, then it seems to set within us that we know we can do it. And I will say that I have set some pretty big vision boards in my life, and I have always accomplished everything that's on that board. And I've got some pretty big things on it right now, and I know I'm going to get there. And it feels good. So for me, the power of them is just that they bring you in harmony with the good that you desire. And like you said, having that in the hospital room, what a great idea, because it was a reinforces the good that you desired, what you wanted, rather than focusing on the negative. It gave you a reason to look at the positive. And I think that's the power of a vision board. When I build them, I feel like a little kid, in class, cutting out pictures and all that. And it's actually a fun experience doing that. And it's good for the brain. And I just think they're good to keep us focused. I think we can lose focus so easily today, especially in today's world, 24-hour news cycles, social media, all these things coming at us. It's easy to lose focus. And when you can have something that's right in front of you that you're looking at every day to keep you focused on what is important, what you would like in your life, how you'd like to live your life, I think there's a lot of value in that.
So how often do you create a vision board for yourself?
That really depends. Realistically, I would say it's probably every 2 to 3 years, maybe even 4 years. Um, I don't put super easy things on my vision board. I put things on that are a challenge, that are like, I'm going to pull this off. Um, and but they all come to fruition. And as I said, I think what's really important about them is that they get you comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I think
Yes.
when we get in that space, it makes us realize that we're capable of doing anything, because we really are. I mean, most things that we're going after, somebody else has already done, most things. So it's possible. You just have to get in tune with how it's possible for you.
Yes. That's so true. And I have to agree with you 100%. So, one of the things that you did mention to me before we came on this podcast is that you are going to Italy. So, can we talk a little bit about that? Because that's
Sure.
exciting.
It is exciting. So here's a funny little side note. As I'm looking across, one of the images on my vision board is the view from a villa in Tuscany, which is really interesting. And in, I guess, about 3 weeks, I am going to be in a villa in Tuscany with that view. So it's kind of interesting. So yes, the Italy trip. It's funny. My wife, she said to me when we first came out with a book, she said, "Brian, I know we're going to get invited to Italy, where you can speak, and then we'll go and travel the country." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, that's not a bad idea." Well, I was invited to speak in Italy. A fellow by the name of Francesco Bellomo is holding an event in Milan, um, and it's called the Spiritual Millionaire. And it's going to be a really cool event. It's going to have myself, Francesco, and a fellow by the name of Tim Story, who's also a very interesting guy. And we're going to be speaking in Milan for 3 days. And then after that, my wife and I are going to kind of tour and explore the country and just really enjoy and fulfill one of the images on my vision board.
Well, that's amazing. Was there a vision on your vision board of you becoming a number one best-selling author?
There is definitely that up there. Yes, yes. And it's interesting, when the book came out, it did hit number one in Amazon in all categories on new releases, which was really uh, amazing to me. When you come up with these things, like when I wrote it, I didn't know, is it going to resonate with a lot of people or not? And that was a pretty cool experience.
That's wonderful. And I think you deserve it because it is truly a great book. And I'm just so honored that you said yes when I asked you to be on my little podcast that is going to be in the top 10 of inspirational podcasts of all time.
See, I love that, LouAnne, and that's good. You just hold the image. And here's one thing I learned, that saying yes to anything that will help you get closer to your goal is important, even if it makes you uncomfortable. And I'll be the first to admit, LouAnne, when I started this adventure I guess almost a year ago, when I released the book, um, I was uncomfortable getting on podcasts. I was uncomfortable getting on the stage. It wasn't my thing. I was stepping out of my comfort zone. But I said yes to any and every opportunity, because I knew that those opportunities would open me up to a new audience of people that may pick up the book, may read it, they may benefit from it. And to me, that was important. So it was an easy yes when you asked.
Aw. Well, thank you because I don't know if you saw it, but I did already put your book up this week on my Facebook page. And I said, if you're not reading anything right now that's making you uplifted or feeling better, then you need to read this book because it really is true. And I did put in there that if you don't like reading books, because there's no more excuses nowadays, if you don't like reading books, you can always pick up the audio book, which I absolutely love audiobooks, as you know. And it's so worth it. It's just so worth it. I can turn on an audiobook and I can get lost. And that's what I love. I've actually turned you on and listened to you while I was falling asleep. And
Well, I hope that's
seriously,
okay.
yeah. And I had to play back what I what I missed while I fell asleep, but it was still, it was just amazing. So I really do appreciate it. And I think that your work is great. So the only other question, I mean, I have so many, this podcast could be like 2 hours long. But you did mention in the book also about maybe some of the places where your dad spoke,
Mhm.
and you always went out and helped him in setting up the whiteboard or the
Yep.
blackboard, I should
Blackboard.
say,
Yep.
the blackboard. And was there ever a time that your father, and maybe you won't want to talk about it, but was there ever a time when your father was like disappointed in like
Disappointed.
how, like just how many people showed up, or did he
Oh,
ever
sure.
worry about his message coming across?
Well, here's the interesting thing. Dad started in the personal development industry in the 1960s and 1970s. So, that's a different world. And in the 1980s, I was early 20s. I was like his roadie at that time before I went off and did my own thing for a while. Um, and you have to think back then there was no internet. There was nothing like that. So there's no way to get your message out there other than knocking on doors. And gosh, he would knock on doors. I mean, he was in real estate offices, insurance offices. He did whatever it took to get the message out. And he would host a free preview evening where he would invite people to come out. And sometimes there'd be a lot of people, and other times there'd be hardly anybody there. Um, but here's the interesting thing that I witnessed, and this was a lesson. Dad always said a pro is at their best regardless. And boy, oh boy, did he live that. Sometimes there would only be a few people in the crowd, or in the room, and a lot of empty seats. He still delivered as if the place was full. He knew his message had value. He knew it would help people because it helped him. And so what did he have disappointing times? Sure he did. There was lots of times where there was not a lot of people out, but he was so committed to his message that he just kept on and kept on and kept on. And I think an important thing, what a lot of people don't realize is that sometimes that overnight success can be 40 years in the making. And that was really Dad. He was doing the work. He was putting in the time. He was delivering the message. He was honing his skills. And for a lot of people, what they don't realize that what really propelled him to the large stage was the movie The Secret. When that movie came out, do you know he was 72 years old when that movie came out? Once that came out, he was on Larry King Live a couple of times, Ellen DeGeneres, and it really opened him up to a whole new world. And from that moment on, I mean, gosh, he was in demand. But the work that he did before that, that's the important thing. That's the work that got him ready. So when that opportunity came, he was there. He was ready for it. And I think that whole opportunity of being in that movie goes back to what we talked about just a few minutes ago, was saying yes to things that you just don't know what doors that will open. But if it is a yes towards something that is on your way to your goal, you got to step out of your comfort zone and say yes. And that was Dad. He was always willing to get out of his comfort zone if it would help propel his message. And that was a great example.
Yes, it is. And so that's you now, right? You are
That is
going to
me
say
now. Yes,
yes.
I am saying yes to many, many new things.
Well, that's wonderful. And are you finding just like a whole world that you didn't even know existed is out there?
I really am. And I'll tell you what, LouAnne, I'm getting a self-satisfaction that is really feels good. It feels good. There's one little lesson here I think I can really share that has a lot of value. Um, Dad and I were very close. And you get that when you read or listen to the book. We had an exceptional relationship. And gosh, I remember I spent pretty much the last 6 months of his life in Toronto, just helping him do whatever I could. And when he was in the hospital right before he passed, we would sit in there in that room and I would just sit beside his bed and we just held hands for hours and hours. And, I talk about it in the first chapter of the book, and that was really the hardest chapter to write. That's the first thing I wrote after he passed, and it probably took me 3 months before I could even start. Um, but one of the things Dad said to me, he says, Brian, keep talking to me even when I'm gone, and just listen to that inner voice and let it guide you. And he says, that's your intuition. And he really drove that home to me to start listening to my intuition. And I will say, LouAnne, I have listened to my intuition since he's passed in the last 2 years, and I have followed it to a T, and it has never guided me wrong. I'm living, I think, a great life because I truly listen to my intuition. How often we let those other voices that come in when our intuition hits us that we should do or shouldn't do something, and those voices come in saying, "Oh, no, no, you can't do that," or "No, you shouldn't do that," or and we listen to those other voices. Those are our paradigms jumping in, trying to, take away from our intuition is perfect. Dad always said our intuition is our direct connection with spirit, with whatever you want to call that. And when I get an intuitive hit to do something, I don't listen to those other voices anymore. I just do it. And if something tells me to not do it, then I don't. If something tells me I need to do this, then I do. And it's interesting. I've done some things that felt like my intuition said it's the right thing to do, which wouldn't have made sense before. But I do it now and I just follow that. And my life has been guided in a really great way because I listen to that. So I challenge anybody that's watching this or listening to this to listen to your intuition and follow it and just let it be because it is perfect. It's all the nonsense chatter afterwards. That's the stuff that holds us back, that I'm not good enough yet, or that whatever, that nonsense that we can put into our head. And if we listen to our intuition and just follow it and go with it, our life will be a lot easier. And that's really, I think that's kind of the final lesson I really learned from Dad. And it's probably one of the most important ones for sure.
Wow. And I'm sure that, like you said, it's right in front of you the whole time. Is that was probably the lesson all along, but until it actually has to resonate with you, right? Like
Yeah,
the lesson will be there when the student appears, I guess.
that's right.
And that's kind of what I'm getting from all of this. So before we end this, what's next for you?
What is next for me? You know what? I don't know. I have a publisher has reached out, and I've worked a deal with a publisher that over the next 3 years for 3 more books. So that's kind of exciting. So I'll have some more information that will be coming out there, some more good material. Um, travel a little more, speak a little bit more, and just keep doing what I can to get the message that my father spent years crafting, to just keep getting that out into the world. Um, it just feels right. I don't know. We say follow our intuition. It feels right. And I think the things that I have learned have value for others so that they can live a better life as well. And that's important. I think if we can enhance others in our life, whether directly or indirectly, I think that's a good thing. And boy, if we can do that, I think not only will I live a better life, but if I can help other people live a better life, that's important. So what's next? It's all related to that. And where it goes, I don't know, but I'm just going to keep saying yes.
That's wonderful. And before we go, I always ask my guests to leave the audience with three golden nuggets right from you, right from your heart. What would you like to leave?
3 golden nuggets.
Yes.
Okay, the first one, well, it would go back to that intuition thing. That's a really big one. We need to listen to our intuition more. So that would be the first nugget. The second nugget would be make sure you're working or you're chasing after something that's big, that is inspiring. Um, Make sure that you're chasing a goal that will cause you to do things in a day you would not normally do. That's having a worthy goal. When you're chasing something that is causing you to step out and do things you wouldn't normally do, there's growth in that. So that would be my second nugget. And if I'm to give you a third nugget, it's something that I talk about in the beginning of the book and towards the end of the book. And that is, what would happen in your life if you consciously chose to be the best version of you every single day? I think our life will be so much better. You know, it would be the best, for me, husband, best wife, best mother, best father, best child, the best at work, the best at whatever you're doing. If you could be the best version of you every day, consciously choose to do that, think of how much better our life will be. That to me is probably the biggest nugget. And that is living in the present moment and being that best version of you. What's happened in the past doesn't matter. What's going to happen in the future doesn't matter. If I'm the best version of me right now, life can only get better. That's it. That's it. So there's your three things for you.
Well, that is wonderful. And thank you so, so much for being a guest on the Mindset Playground. I have really appreciated everything that you've done. I really do appreciate you. And I look forward to following you and keeping in touch with you. So thanks again, Brian.
Well, thank you, LouAnne. I've loved being here, and it's been a great conversation with you.
And to you, the fans and the people listening to this or watching it, I hope that you received some golden nuggets from Brian. He's an amazing author, an amazing speaker, just like his dad. And he's carrying on a wonderful legacy. So if you have the chance at all, please pick up a copy of the book, My Father Knew the Secret, and give it a read, or better yet, listen to the audiobook. I promise it will leave you feeling so good, and you will definitely get a dose of positivity from each and every chapter. So visit my website at LouAnneHunt.ca, LouAnneHunt.ca. Share this message. I'm sure there's somebody out there who would love to hear this message. And visit my website at LouAnneHunt.ca, and you will see all of my previous guests and my upcoming guests on the Mindset Playground, because we're already on season 6, if you can believe it. So thank you for everything. Thank you for following me, and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you never miss another episode of the Mindset Playground. Until next time, have a wonderful day.
This has been the Mindset Playground with host LouAnne Hunt. Tune in each week for another daily dose of positivity right here on the Mindset Playground.